Why are you making me do this?
Because rules matter here.
The late afternoon sun dipped low over the quiet streets of Willow Creek, a suburban enclave in upstate New York where manicured lawns and white picket fences defined the American dream. I pulled into my driveway after a long day at the county prosecutor's office, my briefcase heavy with files from a grueling case involving elder fraud. At 52, I'd seen enough of the world's ugliness to know justice wasn't always swift, but I held on to the hope that coming home to my 6-year-old daughter, Lily, would wash away the day's weight. Her laughter was my sanctuary, a reminder of my late wife, Ellen, who'd filled our lives with warmth before cancer stole her from us 3 years ago. But that evening, as I stepped out of my car, the sanctuary shattered. There, on the front steps of our modest colonial home, sat Lily, her small frame curled into itself, sobbing. Her favorite blue dress was streaked with dirt, her blonde curls tangled, and in her tiny hands, she clutched a jagged piece of plywood, its edges biting into her palms. Blood speckled her fingers, and her cheeks were flushed with tears. My heart stopped. This wasn't my vibrant girl who danced through life with a smile. This was a child broken, and the sight ignited a fire in my chest I hadn't felt since Ellen's diagnosis. "Lily, sweetheart, what happened?" I dropped to my knees, my voice trembling as I reached for her. She looked up, her hazel Ellen's eyes red and swollen, filled with a fear no child should know. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "The mean lady made me carry this because I drew butterflies on the sidewalk. She said I was bad and that you wouldn't want me anymore." The words hit like a sledgehammer. The mean lady could only be Margaret Hensley, the iron-fisted president of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association, who ruled our neighborhood like a queen over her fiefdom. I gently pried the plywood from Lily's hands, wincing at the splinters embedded in her skin. It was rough, heavy, easily 10 pounds, a cruel burden for a 6-year-old weighing barely 40. My mind raced, torn between a father's rage and a prosecutor's instinct to gather evidence. "Tell me everything, baby," I said, pulling her into my arms. Through hiccuping sobs, Lily recounted how Margaret had caught her drawing butterflies with washable chalk on the sidewalk, a game she and Ellen used to play, turning pavement into art. Margaret had screamed that Lily was defacing community property and forced her to carry the plywood from her backyard to the curb 10 times as punishment. When Lily had begged to stop, her hands stinging, Margaret had sneered, "Bad girls don't get to complain. Keep going, or I'll make it 20. Worse, she'd told Lily that if I knew how naughty she was, I'd send her away. The thought of this woman poisoning my daughter's trust in me, exploiting her grief for her mother, made my vision blur with fury. I carried Lily inside, cleaned her wounds with trembling hands, and tucked her into bed with promises that she was safe and loved. But as I kissed her forehead, I made a silent vow. Margaret Hensley had just crossed a line she'd regret. She didn't know she'd targeted the daughter of James Whitaker, a county prosecutor who'd spent 20 years putting bullies behind bars. This wasn't just about chalk or HOA rules anymore. This was about justice for my little girl. The next morning, after dropping Lily off at her grandmother's, I marched to Margaret's sprawling Victorian home at the end of Sycamore Lane. Every step fueled my anger, but I forced myself to stay calm. I was a lawyer, not a vigilante. Margaret answered the door in a pristine blazer, her silver hair perfectly coiffed, her expression dripping with disdain. "Can I help you, Mr. Whitaker?" she asked, as if I were a delivery driver interrupting her day. "I'm here about my daughter, Lily," I said, my voice steady but sharp. "You forced a 6-year-old to carry heavy plywood as punishment for drawing with washable chalk. You hurt her, physically and emotionally. I want an explanation." Margaret's lips curled into a smug smile. "Oh, the little delinquent with the chalk. I handled it appropriately. Children need to learn there are consequences for breaking rules. Perhaps if you weren't so busy with your job, she'd know better than to vandalize our community." Her words were a knife, twisting into the guilt I already carried as a single father. But her arrogance, her casual dismissal of Lily's pain, pushed me to the edge. "You call child labor and verbal abuse appropriate? You injured my daughter, Margaret. That's not discipline, it's cruelty." She crossed her arms, unfazed. "The HOA bylaws prohibit defacing public spaces. Your daughter's chalk was a clear violation. I assigned community service to correct her behavior. If you don't like it, teach her to respect the rules or move to a neighborhood with lower standards. I stepped closer, my voice low and deliberate. Listen carefully, Margaret. If you ever approach my daughter again, you'll face consequences far beyond your precious bylaws. I know the difference between rules and laws, and you've broken several. This isn't over. I turned and left, her glare burning into my back. She thought she was untouchable, but she was about to learn otherwise. Margaret didn't waste time retaliating. By noon the next day, I received a certified letter from the HOA, fining me $4,000 for an unapproved birdhouse in our backyard, a project Lily and I had built together, approved by the previous HOA board. Neighbors started calling, furious about their own sudden fines. $3,000 for unacceptable fence paint, $5,000 for a non-compliant mailbox. Margaret was targeting anyone who'd whispered support for Lily. It was a power play, and she was playing dirty. But her boldest move came on Thursday, when my phone rang as I reviewed case files in my office. It was Principal Carter from Willow Creek Elementary, her voice tight with urgency. "Mr. Whitaker, you need to come to the school now. There's been an incident with Lily." My heart plummeted. I sped to the school, my mind racing with images of Lily hurt or worse. In the principal's office, I found Lily curled in a chair, her eyes red from crying. Across from her sat Margaret, her posture rigid, her face smug. Principal Carter explained that Margaret had shown up at recess, claiming to conduct an HOA inspection of the school's drop-off procedures. She'd cornered Lily on the playground, quizzing her about our family's compliance with HOA rules. When Lily, confused and scared, couldn't answer, Margaret forced her to stand in the corner while her friends played. She told Lily she'd have to do extra chores after school to make up for her disrespect, Principal Carter said, her voice shaking with anger. She also said bad children don't get to stay with their fathers. Lily's small voice broke through. "Daddy, she said you'd send me to live with strangers if I didn't follow her rules." My restraint snapped. I stood, towering over Margaret. "You're done, Margaret. You're banned from this school, and if you come near my daughter again, I'll have you arrested for stalking and child abuse." Principal Carter nodded. "She's already banned from school property. Security is escorting her out." As Margaret was led away, she hissed, "This isn't over, Whitaker. You'll learn to respect my authority." Her words only solidified my resolve. She wasn't just a bully, she was a predator. That evening, as I read Lily bedtime stories, an unexpected visitor knocked on our door. Mrs. Evelyn Turner, an elderly widow from down the street, stood there, her hands trembling but her eyes fierce. "James, I heard what Margaret did to Lily," she said. "It's not the first time. She's been terrorizing kids for years." Evelyn shared chilling stories. Margaret forcing a 9-year-old to scrub her deck in 90-degree heat for riding a scooter on HOA property, making a 7-year-old pick up every pebble in the community park for kicking a ball too loudly. The worst was the Carter family, who'd fled Willow Creek after Margaret targeted their autistic daughter, forcing her to sit on scorching pavement during a meltdown, claiming she was disturbing the peace. The girl had ended up in the ER with heat stroke. The parents were too scared to fight her, Evelyn said. Margaret threatened them with fines until they sold their house at a loss. Then came the bombshell. "I have security footage," Evelyn whispered. "I saw what she did to Lily. It's all recorded." My pulse quickened. This was the evidence I needed. I thanked Evelyn, promising to protect her from retaliation, and began drafting legal documents that night. This wasn't just about Lily Anna Maria, it was about every child Margaret had hurt. The next week was a whirlwind. I filed for an emergency restraining order against Margaret and contacted Child Protective Services, the State Attorney General's office, and the HOA Oversight Board. My role as a prosecutor gave me leverage, but my work on a state task force investigating HOA overreach gave me an edge. For months, I'd been gathering data on HOAs abusing power, over 150 complaints of harassment, discrimination, and financial ruin. Margaret's actions were the perfect case to push for reform. Neighbors began coming forward, emboldened by Evelyn's footage, which she'd shared with a local news station. Channel 9 aired a scathing report titled, "When Neighborhood Rules Become Child Abuse," featuring interviews with the Carters, now living in Ohio, and others who'd suffered under Margaret's reign. The footage of Lily struggling with the plywood, falling twice as Margaret barked orders, went viral. Viewers saw Margaret sneer, "Weak girls don't get to stop," as Lily's hands bled. The public outcry was deafening. In court, Judge Helen Ramsey watched the footage, her face hardening. "Mrs. Hensley," she said, her voice like steel, "this is not discipline. This is cruelty. I've seen gang leaders show more compassion." She granted the restraining order, barring Margaret from coming near Lily, her school, or our home. "Furthermore," she added, "I'm recommending a criminal investigation into your actions." The investigation snowballed. The state uncovered Margaret's financial crimes. She'd siphoned $500,000 in HOA funds for personal use renovating her home, funding a Caribbean cruise disguised as a conference. She'd issued $700,000 in fines, many baseless, and foreclosed on 10 homes, displacing families. Her private files revealed a chilling plan to control single parents and minorities, with notes on our family: widower, overworked; daughter, vulnerable; must establish dominance. Margaret's empire crumbled. She faced felony charges for embezzlement, child endangerment, and conspiracy. The FBI joined when evidence of illegal resident surveillance surfaced. The HOA board ousted her, and residents voted to rewrite the bylaws, prioritizing family protections. Evelyn was elected the new president, her first act of policy ensuring no child could be disciplined without parental consent. 6 months later, Margaret pleaded guilty, sentenced to 4 years in prison and $900,000 in restitution. As she was led away in handcuffs, Lily and I were in our front yard, her chalk butterflies blooming across the sidewalk. The neighborhood had transformed. Kids drew freely, their art a symbol of reclaimed joy. Evelyn organized a community art festival, Lily's Butterfly Day, where families painted the streets with color. One evening, Lily showed me a drawing from school, her and me, hand in hand, surrounded by butterflies and stars. In her wobbly handwriting, she'd written, "My daddy protects me." I framed it in my office, next to my law degree, a reminder of why I fight, not for glory, but for the vulnerable. Lily no longer flinches at the sound of a doorbell. Her laughter fills our home again, and every chalk butterfly she draws is a victory over fear. Margaret thought power meant control, but she learned it comes from protecting those who need it most. Love, not cruelty, endures. What do you think about Margaret's actions and the fight for justice in Willow Creek? Have you ever faced a bully hiding behind authority, or seen a community stand up to injustice? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's talk about how we confront cruelty and protect the vulnerable in our lives. Your voice matters.